My mom died suddenly about 4 months ago, but that wasn't the worst thing. Nor was the fact that her younger sister, my aunt, took up with Dad less than 2 months after her death. The worst was yet to come. It started on a dull evening. I'd just had supper with my aunt and Dad, barely tolerating her bright, friendly chatter about school. I went upstairs to my room as soon as I could to do my homework. I stared at my laptop screen, pretending to look at my assignment, but in reality, I was swimming in grief and missing Mom. I couldn't concentrate on anything since she died. I minimized the assignment tab and looked at the photo I used as a background. It was taken a few years ago during a happy family occasion. My mom and aunt sat side by side, so alike yet so different, with my dad next to Mom and me leaning against him. We were all smiling. Mom had both her arms stretched out around her sister and her husband. The chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen began flashing. I was mildly surprised. It was an older app that no one really used anymore. I had been meaning to delete it. And then I froze. Mom's little image blinked in the chat box. Then the words popped up. "Hello, Thelma. It's me, Mom." Fear gripped my throat. I knew it must be some hacking thing or a stupid error, but I was paralyzed. I turned around and glanced at my bedroom door. It was closed, although the sounds of TV from the living room still wafted in. Aunt Claudia had the TV on whenever she was downstairs, even if she wasn't watching it. "Don't be scared, Thelma. It's really me. I found a way to talk to you, my darling, precious child. I've been missing you so much. If this was a hacker's joke, it was the cruelest joke in the world." Against my will, tears began welling in my eyes and spilling out. "Oh, my darling, please don't cry. It's okay. And it's no use crying anyway. I need you to save that energy." My fingers, still stiff from fear, managed to type out a response. "Mom? What do you mean? Is that really you?" I could sense her familiar frustration rushing back through the laptop, same as when she felt I wasn't being smart or strong enough when she was alive. "Of course, Thelma, it's me, and I've come back to tell you something important. I had my own important news to share. Did you know Aunt Claudia moved in last weekend?" "Yes, Thelma, I know. And this is what gave me the strength to come and tell you. Please be strong. I know you're a strong girl, and you can deal with this. I am sorry you have to. But you have to know. I have to tell you. She can't have everything. My life, my man, my house, my child." A different kind of fear took over me. "Mom, what do you mean?" "Thelma, I'm sorry to put this on you like this. I don't know what else to do. You have to know. Aunt Claudia murdered me." The bottom of my world gave way as I dropped into a dark hole of dread and fear. I felt as if I had known this all along, all through the past 4 months, ever since that awful night when Aunt Claudia called from the hospital where she worked to talk to Dad. I just couldn't say it. "Thelma, are you listening to me?" If I had any doubts that the laptop chat was really my mom, those words dispelled them. I heard them in the exact voice she always used to say those very words to me. "Yes, Mom, but how?" "She was at the hospital, you know. When I went in, she wasn't on my floor, but it was very easy for her to arrange for me to pick up an infection." "Thelma?" The door opened and Aunt Claudia poked her head in. I gave a little scream and frantically minimized the chat box. Aunt Claudia stepped forward. "Oh, honey, you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you okay?" Wordlessly, I nodded. Aunt Claudia sighed. "Thelma, sweetheart, I miss your mom too, but this moping isn't doing you any good. It's hurting your dad, you know. Do you want him to suffer more?" I shrugged. I couldn't speak. I looked up at her. The light was odd on her face. She looked more like Mom than ever before, but also not. "And these clothes, Thelma." She reached out and touched my black sleeve, and I flinched back as though she had hit me. She frowned, and for an instant I thought she was actually going to slap me. But then she smiled and said, "I know girls your age like to wear black all over, but what do you say you and I take a trip to the mall and pick you up some nice new gear? On me. Come on, sweetheart, it will be so much fun." I shook my head furiously. Tears of rage, grief, and fear splattered out. Aunt Claudia began again. "Oh, Thelma." But then she stopped and went quiet. I looked up at her face. She was pale and had a horrible expression. She was staring at my laptop. I followed her line of sight, turning around to look at my screen. The photo had changed. There was a new photo in the background, showing Mom seemingly asleep in a hospital bed, and Aunt Claudia by her side, bent over her. Aunt Claudia seemed to jolt into life. Her face twisted into a terrible snarl, and she screamed, "Are you playing tricks on me?" She lunged towards me. I cringed back in my chair, raising my hands to defend myself against her onslaught. But before she could even touch me, a bolt of electricity sprang out of the laptop, hit her square in the chest, and she dropped dead to the floor. I shrieked in terror. Dad and I had to move from that town. Losing 2 wives in 4 months isn't a good look for anyone. Even though the police combed through our statements and the laptop and the electricity up and down, they eventually had to put it down to a freak accident that happened when I asked my aunt for help to get my laptop working. Dad never remarried, and I never heard from Mom again. Once a year, my parents had me take a blood bath. It was always on the day before my birthday, a tradition I didn't enjoy, but never questioned. My mother would lead me to the tub, my father sitting on the edge, dipping his fingers in to check the temperature for me. I would sit while they washed it into my skin and hair, making sure that I was completely covered before letting me get out. Then I would have to wait as it dried, making my skin feel tight and sticky. I was then sent off to bed with a hug and kiss. On my birthday, the first thing I did was shower off, watching the red retreat down the drain. Then it was like any other birthday. Singing, presents, and cake. It never crossed my mind that our tradition was abnormal. I was excited for my 10th birthday. The prospect of having 2 digits to my age was exhilarating to me. I'd been homeschooled my whole life, but had plenty of friends in my neighborhood to invite to my party. I was asking my friend, Jimmy, if he was going to be able to come when I caught a glimpse behind the veil. Man, I have to go visit my cousins on Saturday, but maybe I can play with you the day before, he had asked. I thought about it, but knew that my annual bath was due that day. Disappointed, I explained to him why that wouldn't work. "Shucks, that's the day I have to take my bath," I told him. "Okay, well maybe after that?" "No, I'll be all sticky. Plus all the blood gets on everything." I could tell by his expression that I had said something wrong. He went running his mouth to everyone, calling me a vampire and upsetting both of our parents, albeit for different reasons. That night, I had the first discussion about the blood baths with my father. He sat me on the couch and got real serious. "Now, Ben, today will be the last time you ever talk about the baths you have to take," he stated sternly. He went on to explain that not everything we did was considered normal, and that by keeping it to myself, I was doing us all a favor. After that discussion, I became more curious. It was intriguing to me that not everybody had to take these baths. As I aged into a teen, I started doing what all boys do. I rebelled, and hard. Since I didn't go to school, I tried even harder to fit in when I was around my friends. I smoked, I vandalized, I stole alcohol from my parents. Some of it could be attributed to peer pressure, but a lot of it was my own choices. I wanted a reputation, wanted to be revered as some sort of anarchist. So I kept pushing boundaries, creating a large wedge between my parents and myself. The eve of my 16th birthday, I decided that I would refuse my blood bath. I was lying on my bed, listening to music and reading, when my mother came in to tell me they had gotten it ready for me. I knew it was coming. Had my response ready. "I'm not taking it," I said, refusing to look up from my book. "Ben, please don't make this difficult. You know you need to," she said, wringing her hands fretfully. I continued to ignore her as she pleaded. After a while, my father came down to see what the delay was. "What's going on?" he asked, appearing in the doorway. My mother told him the situation, his face turning bright red. "Ben, this is happening one way or another," he shouted. I threw my book across the room. "Oh, you think so?" I fired back, instantly bristling to the challenge. His eyes widened and his nostrils flared out. He was more angry than I had ever seen him. "That's right," his voice now becoming a growl. Without a second thought, I charged at him, knocking him aside and running down the stairs. I could hear him screaming at me all the way past the driveway, begging me to return. I ran for a long time, finally running out of breath and resting near a city bus stop. I sat down for a few minutes, aware of a strange sensation at the ends of my fingers. They felt tingly for a bit, then they started to feel hot. Terrified, I watched as they began to blister, running up past my knuckles and cracking open the skin on their way upward. Howling in agony and shocked by what I was seeing, I fell to the ground and writhed. There wasn't a soul around. My cries for help went unanswered as the skin kept on bubbling and cracking, making it all the way up to my elbows. Headlights appeared in front of my eyes. Though I was nearly blind with pain, I recognized my father's car. He leapt out, grabbing me under my armpits and pulling me into the vehicle. I kept screaming during the drive, showing him my disintegrating arms. We drove at a breakneck pace, my father cursing the whole time. His face white, he told me to hold on a little longer, that I would be okay soon. I expected him to take me to a hospital. When we pulled into our driveway, my entire arms and shoulders looked like raw hamburger meat, the skin blistering around my neck and down my sides. It was the most intense agony I had ever been in. My body went into shock. I vaguely recall being carried out of the vehicle, my mother running out to help. We went up the stairs, both of them grunting under my weight. Then blackness took over. Voices around me, swirling distortedly, started to come back into focus. Gradually, the sensation of pain seemed to lighten. My arms were no longer on fire. "He was this close, this fucking close," my father was saying, sounding like he was going to break into sobs. My mother hushed him, telling him he had done a great job, that he had saved me again. I could now feel that I was in a familiar substance, warm, inviting, soothing to my blistered skin. The bloodbath. When they noticed I was awake, they both broke down, telling me how worried they had been, how they could never live without me, that I was their entire world. Their hysterics got me going as well, realizing how awful I had been to them over the last year. They both held onto my hands as I let the blood saturate and heal my mangled skin. The next year, I had learned my lesson. My father prepped the tub for me, giving me a half smile as I thanked him after he told me it was ready. I never asked why I had to take them. I never asked where the blood came from. It just seemed like something that we all knew was better off left alone. Which brings me to this year. My father, who was now in his 60s, sat me down again. "Ben, it's time you understand some things." He went on to explain that late in my mother's pregnancy with me, she started having complications. She was on bed rest for a while, barely able to move. She delivered me 2 weeks before her due date, slightly underweight, but very sickly. He explained that he could do little for me but watch as doctors and nurses did their best to keep me alive throughout the next months. I felt helpless. I begged to trade places with you and take the suffering you were going through from you, he told me, reaching forward and taking my hands. There was this man. I had seen him at the hospital often. He saw what we were going through, our family, and he offered me something, told me he knew a way to help keep you alive. I didn't want to hear it. I told him to leave me alone, but he persisted, claimed he was an angel of sorts. As you got sicker and sicker, closer to death's door, he kept telling me he could help. I shook my head, and this was a lot to take in, all new information to me. My father continued, tears spilling from his eyes as he went on. "Ben, I was desperate. I loved you so much, I couldn't lose you. I gave in, asked him to help. I begged, told him whatever he had to do it. He smiled at me, told me he would save you. And just like that, you started to get better. I was shocked, the doctors even more so. We went home, you were healthy. It was a miracle." He wiped his eyes, leaned backward, trying to gather his thoughts, then looked at me. "It was just before your first birthday, when I saw the man again. It seemed like he had come out of thin air. He said the only way for you to stay alive was to, give you your baths each year. I didn't believe him at first, but then we saw what was happening to you, to your skin. It was just like what happened when you were turning 16, only then it was much slower. He spoke shakily. So I did what I had to do. I spilled the blood. I filled the tub, and I have done it each year since. I'm sorry, son. I wish things had gone differently. He finished. I leaned forward and embraced him, having no words for the situation. We stayed like that for a while. Eventually, he broke it off, facing me again. Ben, there's something else. You know that I'm getting older. The time will come, maybe sooner than we think, that I won't be around anymore. He bit his lip, holding in his emotion. Ben, when that happens, you'll have to start filling the tub up yourself. Back in August of 2020, I woke up one morning, passed out, and threw up blood all over the place. I was rushed to the hospital, where I learned that I was very close to dying because I had a massive stomach ulcer and was bleeding extremely badly. My stomach had filled up with blood. While at the hospital, before being rushed into emergency surgery, I was terrified. I didn't know if I was going to make it. Then a woman came into my room. She looked at me and asked, "Are you doing okay?" I said, "Yeah." She then asked, "Are you scared?" I said, "Yes, I am." I am not religious at all, but she asked if she could pray for me. I was so worried about not seeing my kids again that I said, "Yes, please." I don't remember the prayer, but I remember she finished and told me everything is going to be okay and that she'd see me later. She left and I never saw her again after that. I was in that hospital for 17 days. Then I thought about it and realized she wasn't dressed like the nurses or any other staff. She wore all black, and it has me wondering who or what she was. I had not been given any pain medicine or anything yet, so it was not a hallucination. I've been thinking about it for 3 years now, and I need answers. There is no mirror. In the barbershop, I went into a barbershop with no mirrors. This confused me, as mirrors are important in barbershops, so we can check out the end product of our haircut. When the barber finished cutting my hair, he asked me, "Would you like to check your haircut?" To which I replied, "Yes, please." He then started to strangle me by using a chokehold called the guillotine choke. I then started to feel unconscious and felt like I was floating in the air. I then witnessed seeing myself sitting on the barber chair, with me being choked out. I was able to check out my haircut, which was fine. I must have been close to death, because my spirit was coming out of the body, and I could see everything. Then the barber let go of the chokehold, and my spirit or soul went back into my body, and I turned round to the barber and said, "The haircut looks fine." This is not a suicide note. 3 months ago, I learned of my uncle's passing. We weren't particularly close, but he left me one of his houses in the will. I was touched, but just wanted to sell it off. I am a fairly new father of twin girls and didn't need another thing to manage right now. To speed up the process, I decided to travel across the country to live in the house until a sale was assured. My job just requires a laptop and phone, so I was approved to work remotely for the time being. Unfortunately, my wife had to stay at her job, so I had to come alone. At first, I treated it as a mini vacation. I had hoped it would only last a week, but the process it was more involved than I thought. I had a realtor taking care of most things, but after a month, I'm still here. I noticed things going wrong right away. Stuff was never where I last placed it. I'd see shadows out of the corner of my eye. I've lost track of time constantly. I thought it was caused by stress. Loneliness, except for the few times the realtor came by with prospective buyers, the house was the quietest place I'd ever been in. Before I completely lost my mind, the neighbor came by with a dog. She was an elderly woman who explained that she had been dog sitting while my uncle was in the hospital. Now that I was here, she thought I should take Buster, the golden retriever. I thought the neighbor might have been forgetful because she seemed to think my uncle had just passed last week. Either way, I fell in love with Buster, and his presence was exactly what I needed. I even thought it would be a tremendous present to bring home to my girls. I just hoped my wife would feel the same way. However, even the dog could tell something was wrong with the house. Buster accepted his new living arrangements pretty quickly, but would never willingly go upstairs. This was all right with me at the time. I thought it would make it easier to keep track of him. Then Buster disappeared. Literally, 1 second he was standing right behind me as I was opening the treat jar to give him a snack. My eyes left him for just a moment to put the jar back, and then he was gone. I ran through the whole house calling his name. The kitchen was connected to the living room, and on the other end of that was the master bedroom and study. The other end of the kitchen led to a dining room, which was connected to the entrance hall. That also led into the living room and stairs to the second floor. After walking upstairs, you had a choice of right or left along a balcony that overlooked the living room on one side and entrance on the other. Going left led immediately to a guest room and game room. Going right led to 2 more guest rooms and a bathroom at the end of the hall. I looked in every room and had to accept that somehow the dog made it outside, even though there was no doggy door, and every door and window had been closed and locked. So I searched the surrounding neighborhood for another hour before giving up. I was thinking about making flyers when I opened the front door and heard Buster scrambling towards me from the kitchen. I was ecstatic, of course, but I just couldn't wrap my head around how I could have missed him. I let Buster sleep in the bed with me that night. In hindsight, it was a huge mistake, but it made me feel better at the time. Things picked up at work, though, and I soon forgot about all the strangeness surrounding this house. Clients called me constantly, but we were getting a lot done, and I landed multiple large contracts in a row. I was working around the clock, but I knew I'd be due a promotion once I returned to the home office. Several times I'd get lost in a phone call or spreadsheet and suddenly find that it was nighttime. I'd be so absorbed with work that I would block out Buster whining for food or to go outside. I started to set alarms to keep track, but I had too many important clients to slow down. I was on top of the world, but my health was starting to suffer. I'd forget to eat and even sleep sometimes. There was always something else to do, or someone to talk to. I even got better at taking care of Buster. Better than I was taking care of myself, at least. Then my good mood ended with a bang. Literally. Buster was whining behind me as I finished another spreadsheet. Then we both heard a door slam upstairs. For the first time since I brought him inside, Buster ran upstairs by himself. I almost called the cops, but I felt silly with the phone in my hand. I started to doubt I had heard anything at all. And if there were an intruder, surely Buster would have been making more noise. So I mustered all the courage I could manage and crept upstairs with a frying pan as my weapon. It was dark upstairs, but enough moonlight was coming in from the downstairs windows for me to make out Buster standing in front of the bathroom. I had purposely closed every door when I last came through here looking for the lost dog, but this door was now wide open. I flipped on the hallway light, but nothing happened. With no better ideas, I raised my frying pan high and walked slowly to the bathroom. There was no window in here, so it was pure darkness inside. I was terrified. Bizarrely, Buster just looked frozen. His tail stood straight up, and he just stood there pointed towards the door. I tried to take it as a good sign that he still wasn't barking. That's what finally got me through the threshold and into the bathroom. The whole time, my eyes had been getting used to the darkness, and the bathroom was too small for there to have been anyone there without me noticing. I started to relax when I took a step forward into something sticky. I suddenly realized that I had my cell phone in my pocket. I pulled it out and turned it on to cast some light on the floor. I immediately dropped it at the sight of the bright red liquid that surrounded my feet. I fled the upstairs, and this triggered Buster to follow. This time I had no trouble calling the police. Thankfully, there was already a patrol car nearby, so 2 officers arrived within a couple of minutes. Their powerful flashlights cut through the darkness like knives, but they soon found nothing was wrong with the upstairs lights. Something did appear to be wrong with my pipes, though, as they called out from above that the puddle was just rusty water. Because of their insistence, I climbed up the stairs again and clearly saw a muddy brown puddle in the bathroom. The banging must have been from a pipe breaking. Both cops had a laugh at my expense, but were otherwise understanding. They even gave me a number of good plumber, though my cell phone was ruined after I dropped and left it in the puddle. I would have to use the one landline in the kitchen from now on. I let them out and promised to call the plumber first thing in the morning. Yet, as exhausted as I was, I couldn't go to sleep over that excitement, so I stayed up to draft some more important documents for my company. Before I knew it, Buster had made another mess in the living room. I was dead tired and said some things to Buster that maybe I shouldn't have, and I did some things to him that I know I really shouldn't have. I decided to do something about the stress I had been under, and I spoke to my supervisor that same morning. To my surprise, they were happy to let me have the week off as a sort of mental vacation. Just like that, all my outstanding work was taken away. With nothing else to do, I tried to focus on Buster. I played games with him and fed him a bunch of treats to make up for my earlier neglect. Then I found the first message. I didn't notice it for some time, since I had been avoiding the second floor. But I realized that I hadn't actually called the plumber. Before doing so, I went upstairs to see if things had gotten any worse. Instead, I immediately saw a message written in red on the hallway wall. It read, "Losing your mind?" For a second, I kind of did. I was scared to death at the thought that someone had to have sneaked into my house while I was there. Probably when I was sleeping. I won't bear repeating everything I said or did right after. Let's just say I hadn't become any braver since the banging. Eventually, I unlocked my bedroom door and made my way to the kitchen with Buster leading the way. I called the police again. Those same 2 officers were able to show up, and then slowly we cleared every inch of the house. Yet we found no one. Everything was locked, no sign of forced entry. The police actually took me seriously, something that bewildered me at the time, and admitted that this isn't the first house in this neighborhood to experience this. There had been a series of break-ins where nothing was stolen, but the police officers still offered to have a car sit outside for the night. Even though I took them up on this, I soon realized that I'd never get to sleep tonight in this house. So I called my only friend in town, and really in the whole state, an old college roommate who coincidentally lived 30 minutes away. He offered to pick me and Buster up in a few hours, so I busied myself with packing up my suitcase. I didn't know how long I would need, so I pretty much packed everything I had brought with me to the house in the first place. I left my room to pick up some doggy toys when my friend called to say he was waiting outside. I decided to hang up the phone and meet him immediately. I needed the human company, and he could help me move my stuff. But the driveway was empty. There was no friend, no car. I called him back immediately, and he insisted he was outside. I listened to him get out of his car and walk up to the front door. He knocked, and I could hear the door open and an elderly woman greet him. My friend asked for my name and mentioned my uncle. The woman said she had never heard of either of us. After thanking her, my friend left and asked me if I had gotten all that. I told him I must have given him the wrong address. He rattled off the correct one and confirmed he was there. After asking him to wait, and I left the house again. I walked out to the street and looked back at the numbers written on the curb and on the mailbox. Only there weren't any numbers. Just a message, "Losing your mind?" on the curb, written in red. The temptation to leave right away was great. I could just start walking and never stop. But I had to get my stuff, and more importantly, Buster. So I entered the house one last time. When I came back to the room, my suitcase was empty. Everything I had just spent the last hour packing up was back in its proper place. Despite how impossible this was, I focused on only one goal. We needed to leave. I put a leash on Buster and was shocked to see how haggard he was. I resolved to make it up to him when this was all over. I tried to leave out the front door like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't open it. The knob turned freely, but the deadbolt wouldn't slide back. I was really scared now, but Buster's presence helped. I knelt down to give him a hug, and he gave me an idea while licking my face. Whatever was happening, it sure wasn't the result of a maniac hiding in my house. Still, I didn't know what forces were actually opposing me. So I walked to the backyard and said loudly, "Well, Buster, time for a little walk?" The glass door slid open easily. Buster bounded out happily. I guess it had been a long time since I let him outside. I followed more tentatively, and for the first time, examined the backyard closely. There was an iron fence surrounding the yard and with another space between the bars that Buster could slip through. And then I saw it. A tree that grew too close to the fence and had several branches extending through and above it. I assumed the gate would be supernaturally locked too. So this was my exit. Buster didn't need any prodding. He waited patiently for me on the other side as I painfully pulled myself up and over the fence. I was suddenly aware of how weak and tired my recent lifestyle had made me. When I was in the process of climbing down the tree on the other side, Buster growled once and then took off like a shot towards a nearby hill. I jumped down and gave chase. He disappeared over the top, and I scrambled to keep up on the surprisingly steep surface. Luckily, I found where someone had laid some stone bricks into the side for an easier way up. It was still steep enough that I had to focus on placing my feet correctly to keep from sliding, so I was looking down when my next reach up resulted in my hand grabbing carpet. Confused, I looked up, see the second floor landing. I looked down to see the rest of the stairs that led to the entrance hall and living room of the house. Buster was nowhere to be found. Demoralized and dead tired, I crawled the final steps and just sat on the landing for a while, occasionally calling for Buster. Eventually, the kitchen phone rang. Whatever ghosts were messing with me, I realized they couldn't stop outside forces from helping. I tumbled down the stairs in my haste and landed hard on the cold tiles below. But I was only dazed for a second and soon was in the kitchen with the phone in my hand. My wife's warm voice filled me with hope, and she was concerned that she hadn't heard from me in a while. I couldn't recall the last time I had even tried. She was trying to tell me that my work hadn't heard from me in a week, while I tried to tell her to call the police. Her words gave me pause, though. I asked, "What do you mean? I was given the week off? Dear? I thought you were supposed to continue working as soon as you got there." Yeah, but they gave me a week off because of all the stress I've been under. Wait a second, how long have I been out here? Honey, you've been gone almost 9 days now. My stomach sunk, but I didn't hesitate to say, "Listen, you need to call the cops. Something is wrong. I think I'm having a medical emergency." I had just been trying to come up with an excuse to limit the amount of follow-up questions, but I ended up realizing that this was actually the most likely explanation. Maybe I was just suffering from a gas leak or brain tumor. Ironically, either of those options seemed preferable than living in a haunted house. My wife asked, "Baby, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I thought I saw a shadow move out of the corner of my eye. As I answered, "Yes, I'm okay, but no, I need help. There's something wrong about this house." "You aren't making any sense. Just listen to me. Call the police and tell them my uncle's name. Tell them to come to this house and an ambulance might be needed. Please help me." "Please help you? Pretty please, with a cherry on top?" I stared at the phone in my hand as my wife's voice continued to come out of it. It sounded like her, but in a mocking tone. I've never actually heard from her before. She said, "Does your tummy hurt? When's the last time you ate? I wonder what Buster tastes like." I slammed the phone down, but whatever it was on the other side was right. My stomach was hurting. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten. On cue, I heard Buster whining from upstairs. Only after I started running towards the stairs did I notice just how bruised and sore my legs were from my spill down those steps. I pushed through the pain and climbed the stairs yet again. Buster was back in front of the bathroom, lying on his side and looking thinner than I had ever seen him. "Losing your mind?" was written all over the hallway now, including on the ceiling and floor. I no longer had any doubt the messages were written in blood. Some of them were still dripping. I walked over and picked up Buster, while a banging started at my front door. I would have jumped if Buster hadn't been weighing me down. I heard the front door open, and whoever it was identified themselves as the police. I even recognized the voice as belonging to one of the officers who had visited previously. Why can't I remember his name? After calling out that I was upstairs, I turned with Buster and found the hallway stretched before me, many times its original length. Despite how thin he looked, Buster felt heavier than ever. I knew this was all just some sort of trick to not get me in touch with the police officer. I thought I must have really been talking to my wife. She had to have come through with calling the police, and the ghost just distorted the end of the call. So I started my trek back to the stairs and shuffled my feet as fast as I could, yelling all the way. But then a voice answered the police officer. A woman's voice. My wife's voice. I could hear her say, "I'm sorry, my husband wasn't feeling well. He's resting in the bedroom. Can I help you?" I screamed as loud as I could just to get attention. But it was no use. I heard the officer say, "I'd like to check up on him all the same." Sure, come in. He's right through here." It was right out of a nightmare. I was sweating profusely while every step seemed to get me nowhere. I tried to speed up, but the hallway just stretched further. And then I heard a man's blood-curdling scream from downstairs. Suddenly the hallway snapped back, and I found myself somehow right at the top of the stairs. My momentum couldn't be stopped. I fell down the stairs and landed hard, on top of Buster. He howled in pain, but at least he was alive. I saw a long, thick trail of blood go around the corner and under my closed bedroom door. There was still a shadow of something under the door. I painfully crept to the kitchen and grabbed my trusty frying pan before making my way back to the bedroom door, as quietly as I could. My eyes watched the moving shadows nervously. Whatever was waiting there had killed a man. That meant it could kill me. But if it could have a physical impact, then surely it had to be susceptible to a physical impact too. So I raised the frying pan and slowly started to turn the handle. Before I made much progress, the door flew open on its own, and something turned suddenly to me. I swung my frying pan down. The cop stood before me, a smile frozen on his face. We both looked down at the knife plunged into his chest. My hand was still wrapped around the handle. He fell to the side, and I fell backwards to sit heavily on the now clean floor. I was positive I had picked up the frying pan. I could remember its weight. But now I also remembered, going to the kitchen and pulling out the knife. I seriously wondered if I was losing my mind. I looked down to find I had the knife in my hands again. I dropped it at once and crawled back to check on Buster. He wasn't moving. I put my head on his flank and was devastated to feel he was still warm, but not breathing. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I did nothing for a long time. I was lethargic, but somehow made it to the couch in the living room. I waited there until nightfall, and then slept on the couch. When I woke up, I waited some more. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but nothing horrible was happening to me while I waited. I wasn't in a hurry to change that, but the bodies of Buster and the cop were still there. I needed to do something. My stomach rumbled as I finally got off the couch. That was another problem with just staying put. First things first, I found a shovel in an outdoor closet attached to the backyard porch. Digging the hole was exhausting, so I settled for just burying Buster now. I planned on getting to the cop after finding something to eat. I picked up Buster and carried him outside. His fur was still so warm. It was hard to believe he was gone. But there was no life behind his big brown eyes. I gently laid him down in the hole and got to work. Sometime later, I wandered into the kitchen and raided the pantry. The house was quiet apart from my efforts. Whenever I stopped moving, the silence was complete. I wondered if the ghosts had just been trying to make me a murderer after all. Now that their goal had been met, maybe they would leave me alone for a while, just in time because I was starving and didn't need any more distractions. I opened a box of cereal and had a handful up to my lips when I paused. How could I tell I was actually eating what I was looking at? What if I had actually been opening a box of rat poison? I still wasn't sure what these ghosts were capable of. I imagined the food turning into worms after it was already in my mouth. With that thought, I threw the cereal to the ground and stomped off, no longer hungry. I needed to concentrate my efforts on leaving this place. Right on cue, I walked by the front door. It was wide open. Instinctively, I made a leap for it before stopping with my outstretched hand, just a foot short of the door. This had to be another trick. I could see the door slamming shut in my face, or even taking a few of my fingers with it. I could feel a breeze enter the house, but I was too scared to move. This was the most impossible situation I had ever been in, or even heard of. All of my senses had failed me before. However, my need for freedom eventually caused my feet to move. Upon slowly exiting the house, I saw the cop car just sitting in my driveway. The door was unlocked, and the keys were sitting in the front seat. My mind went wild trying to explain the situation. Maybe the cop was secretly a murderer and had killed previous owners of this house. Maybe his sacrifice helped them move on. I couldn't think of any other explanation for my good luck at the time. So I just pushed my misgivings down and got in. I drove out of the neighborhood without incident, but I had new problems. I was in an unfamiliar city, driving a cop car with no money or other belongings on me, and I had no idea what to do next. So I kept driving. It felt good to be free of that house. It felt good to see the sun. So I kept driving. On and on. Left turn, right turn, left turn, right turn. No idea where I'm going. And then I realized I hadn't seen any other cars on the road for some time. Where was everyone? Where was I? The sinking feeling happened again, in the pit of my stomach, but also around my whole body. I sunk back into the car seat, and then realized I was sitting in an armchair, back in the living room of my uncle's house. My arms were up like I was still holding onto a steering wheel. I started to cry with frustration as I stood up and screamed. How long had I been sitting there, with a stupid grin, moving my arms up and down like a madman? I turned around and saw my work laptop on the dining room table. It was on and glowing at me. I walked over to it and saw that something was already written down in this post. It read, "Lost your mind? Good, now you won't mind losing the rest." Suddenly my fist felt weighed down. I raised it to find another kitchen knife in my hand. I dropped it immediately. I erased the message and started to type out a request for help. I ignored the screen and just focused on the keys. But I kept hitting them wrong, and another message slowly formed. "I'm sorry, I've disappointed you all. For the last time, goodbye." I could have screamed again, but I noticed something had changed. I wasn't in the dining room anymore. I was in the study. I kept writing and writing and writing, and my own words started to come out. I have sent out emails requesting help. I've posted on the local police department's Facebook for assistance, and I've just tried to keep writing no matter what. This is my latest attempt to keep my sanity. Whenever I've tried to take a break, I find myself in a new room, with new horrors descending on me. Once I opened the study door, out to a hellish landscape, and almost stepped out onto lava. I wasn't sure if it was all an illusion, but I didn't even want to have a vision of my feet burning. So I just closed the door and resumed writing. I'm not even sure this is all because of ghosts. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and the truth is simply that I have no idea what's going on. As I've gone over these crazy events, I've realized that I can't recall my uncle's name, or what he looked like. I'm not sure I ever had an uncle. I'm trying to think really hard about how I came here. Did I fly? Drive? I can't remember. Have I always been here? Even weirder, I can't remember my realtor's name or even what gender they are. I've met them in person several times. Why don't I know things I should? I can't even remember the name of my daughters or my wife. Am I even a father? Am I even a person? I know I must be because here I am, writing in this small study. But now that I think about it, I can't remember who my parents are, what they look like, or anything about my childhood. Now I just remember this house and all the nightmares, waking and otherwise, I've experienced here. I'm feeling a lot like I was back in the cop car. I found a way forward, but I really don't know what to do next. This is not a way to live, and I'm getting more and more tired. I'm so hungry, and I'm finding it harder to focus. I keep hearing voices, and they're getting louder. I know if I stop writing, I won't last long. But I'm running out of things to say. My hands are tired. I'm tired. So tired.DABCDEFGHIJKLMNOPQRS Tavoxizi. And the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. I need to keep writing, but I don't know what to say anymore. What's my name? I don't know. I'll die if I stop writing. I'll die if I stop working. ABSERGHIKLMNOQPRSTUVEBYX. And the quick brown Fayox gumped over the lazy dogs. Dogs. Buster. I miss Buster. I wish I could pet him one last time. But was he ever real? Is anything I'm so tired, so hungry, I need to focus? The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy goodbye. The quick brown and I'm sorry jumped over pointed. You lazy dog, so goodbye, I'm sorry. Jumped over disappointed, you lazy. For the lazy dogs, goodbye, I'm sorry. I've disappointed you all. For the last time, goodbye. College Secret Society. At my university, there's a castle just off campus that is home to a secret society. The secret society goes back to the 1800s, and obviously everything they do is kept under serious wraps. On Halloween a couple years ago, some friends and I went to this castle because we thought it would be fun to go by the creepy castle on Halloween. I had done some research beforehand on the secret society, and there were many articles tying them to demonic and weird stuff. So I thought it would be perfect for Halloween. Anyways, the road to the castle is at the end of a residential street, and you have to walk on a gravel path into the woods to get to it. As we are walking up to the castle, we heard a woman let out the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. At that moment, we all ran back to the residential road. Most of the people we were with decided to head back to campus because they were seriously freaked out, but a few of us stayed. We walked back over to the castle, and this time, we noticed people standing on top of the castle with black hooded robes. Once we noticed them, they immediately started throwing rocks at us. At that point, we decided to leave. But as we make our way down the path, we heard what sounded like Latin chanting coming from the castle. When we made it back to the actual road, we saw some other students who came from the woods behind the castle. They mentioned that they also heard the woman scream, and that they were also just as freaked out as us. As we're talking, we hear the sound of a little boy yelling, "Help!" And then again, "Someone please help." It was coming from the direction of the castle, so we decided to go back because obviously this kid needed help. When we got there, we noticed that the amount of hooded figures had doubled, and they were all looking at us from the roof of the castle. We stood there for a few minutes just staring at them, but we just decided it was best to leave because they had already shown hostility. This experience honestly shook me, but I thought, maybe it's just a Halloween prank. But the more I started thinking about it, I realized I wasn't so sure. We were out there for about 2 hours, and our group and the other group of students were the only ones out there that whole time. Why would they come up with some elaborate scheme for only 10 people? And how could I explain the screaming woman and kid if it was just a prank? I know it sounds far-fetched, but I think something really happened that night. There's more details I can share and other strange things happened, but I'm curious if y'all think I'm crazy for believing that it could have been something more than just a Halloween prank. Could this have been some kind of sacrifice or demonic ritual? March 17th, 1947. I'm going to run away with him, mark my damn words. Neither Mama nor Daddy nor anyone else is going to keep me here. They could dig a hole 30 feet deep, and I'd still find a way to claw my way back. With a love like this, there are no blockades that can't be torn down. I hate this godforsaken house full of bullshit prophets blasting on the radio, while my mama beats me senseless with the flat end of a wooden spoon. I need out, and he's my way. He's the only way. He's got a car, cash, and no family. And damn it, when he says my name, it sounds like butter melting by the window. Diary, I've told you how we met, but I can't wait to tell you how we leave, how we escape. Mama says he's blasphemous, and Daddy doesn't say anything, just lowers his eyes and lights a lucky. They don't know love like I do. They never will. Their lives are pathetic. Their whole purpose on this earth is to suffocate me until I fall to my knees in submission. I don't think they ever loved me either. Just had me out of tradition. Get married, have a kid. That's what Mama taught. I truly think the only time my parents ever screwed was the night I was conceived, and they haven't looked at each other since. Tonight, they'll finally see. They'll see what true love looks like, what burning passion and rage look like when two people fully mean it when they say, I'd do anything for you. Tonight, Mama and Daddy will meet the God they claim saved them. He ain't ever saved me. I'm saving myself. Maybe my love was an angel sent from him, but looking in his eyes, I know it was Lucifer he was in cahoots with. His darkness excites me. He promised to kill for me. That's love. I feel it now. Later, string bean. I've been searching for other instances of this phenomena across the internet, and I hope that in reading this, that those of you who have also had this experience will come forth and we can discuss. When I was young, 10, we moved around ALIT, witness protection. We spent most of my childhood bouncing around hotels, or if we were lucky, we got a house for a short while before being relocated. I remember one night shortly after being settled into a new house in Alberta. I was in bed. It was the dead of night. Everyone was asleep. And as was often the case with new houses, it took me a long time to start falling asleep. I'd like to figure out a house's night noises, creaking, air ducts, etc. But this night, something occurred that me and my mother both still talk about to this day. As I lay in bed, around 1 a.m., I heard my mom call me from the kitchen. So I hopped out of bed and poked my head out the bedroom and started making my way down the hall towards the kitchen. The only light on in the house was the kitchen light. As I walked down the hall, I passed my siblings' bedroom doors and my parents' bedroom door. I heard my mom call me again from the kitchen. At this point, I'm right at the end of the hall, not more than 3 paces away from the kitchen doorway. When I hear my mom from her bedroom say, "Go back to bed," I heard it too. At that point, I became terrified and ran to my room and hid under the blankets. While my mom woke Dad up to search the house, they found nothing. And those of you who have had a similar experience, let's talk about it. I'm certain that if my mother hadn't told me to go back to bed, if I had made it to the kitchen, that something terrible would have happened to me. Skinwalker? Last summer, my friend and I decided to go camping in a remote area of the Appalachian Mountains. We were excited to get away from the city and spend a weekend in nature. We found a secluded spot, set up our tent, and spent the day hiking and exploring. As night fell, we built a fire and settled in, enjoying the sounds of the forest. Around midnight, we decided to turn in. My friend quickly fell asleep, but I lay awake, listening to the crackling of the fire and the rustling of leaves. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it grew louder and more distinct. It sounded like someone was saying my name. I sat up, peering into the darkness beyond the fire's light. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the clearing. I tried to wake my friend, but he wouldn't budge. The figure moved closer, and I could see it was tall and thin, with long, spindly limbs. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its eyes on me. Panic set in. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it toward the figure, but it disappeared. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, clutching the flashlight. At dawn, I finally managed to rouse my friend and told him what happened. He laughed it off, saying I must have imagined it. We packed up and left, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A few days later, I did some research and found out that the area we camped in has a history of strange occurrences. Local legends speak of a shadowy figure that appears at night, calling out to people, luring them into the woods. Those who follow are never seen again. I don't know what I saw that night, but I haven't been camping since, and for the very first time, I've experienced sleep paralysis, which leads me to my next story, like for it. I've heard many other encounters, but do you guys think it was a skinwalker and skinwalkers are real? If not, then what on God's green earth did I encounter? A letter to the man who killed my cat. Hello, Philip. You don't know me, but I know you. In fact, I know everything about you. I know where you work, where you live, where where you keep your front door keys. You're not down here because I admire you. It's because you've wronged me, and you're gonna pay for it. Now, you thought it would be all fun and games to shoot my cat full of BBs and crush his skull with your boot. You honestly think that I wouldn't notice? No, I love that cat. But you decided that you were gonna kill him for the hell of it, huh? Just to prove how much of a big man you are to your friends by killing a defenseless kitten, right? There's an old saying. It's called treat others how you wanted to be treated, so that's what I'm gonna do. You are currently sitting in a puddle of gasoline right now, and as soon as I light this match, you will be engulfed in flames. I hope you're a praying man because you're gonna see God today. Now when you get to hell, tell the devil Father Dixie sent you, Philip. Good. Never sleep in your car on a road trip. I'm from Connecticut. I was in a long-distance relationship with a girl from Georgia and would often make road trips down to visit her. I don't really mind. I love road trips. I've driven across the United States and back, all on my own. There's just something about traveling the highways of the U.S. by yourself that's so freeing. To save money, I would sleep in my car. It's not so bad. It's basically camping in a metal tent. It makes you feel like you're really roughing it. I just recline the seat back, keep the key in the ignition just in case, and doze off. No, I don't put anything up to block the windows for privacy. Maybe I should have. The trip down south is a comfortable 2-day drive. My stop would usually be somewhere along the Virginia-North Carolina border. So, for my previous trip, that's exactly where I stopped. That night, rest stops were often less trafficked and thus quieter than truck stops. Normally, I would have stopped at a Love's, but I was so tired that I settled for the first rest stop I saw. It was oddly vacant that night, with only a couple of lone cars sitting forlorn under the amber street lamps. Most likely travelers with the same idea as myself. I pulled into a parking spot away from the others, under the shadow of a tree and far from the street lamps. I figured I would have more privacy there as opposed to being bathed in light. So I did my usual thing, locked my doors, opened the window just a hair for ventilation, kept my key in, reclined the seat, and went to sleep. I was never interrupted on any of these car camping nights, so I never suspected anything on this one. And then a sharp tap woke me up. At first, I thought I had heard it in my dream. I opened my eyes, a bit confused. Since I was leaned back, I was facing the ceiling and couldn't see anything. I heard another tap, like a tiny object hitting a hard surface. It came in an irregular rhythm. Was it raining? Was water dripping onto my windshield? I was under a tree. Maybe something fell from the branches. Maybe a squirrel or a bird dropped something. What if a squirrel was climbing around my car? Or what if it wasn't an animal? The thought occurred to me that it might very well be a person poking around outside. What did they want? Were the doors locked? Yes, the keys were in the ignition. I could leave in an instant. Still, I lay there, completely still, pretending to be asleep, pretending I hadn't heard anything, hoping whoever it was would leave me alone. It was better not to find out. I was too afraid to find out. It was better to stay here in blissful ignorance. Still, the tapping continued. I had to do something. There was no way I was just going to stay there. I had to look. My heart was pounding. In that moment, it was deafeningly loud. Whoever was out there could probably hear it. I decided I was going to look. I was going to raise my head up and see what was making the noise. So that's what I did. What met my eyes sent a jolt through my entire body. Every muscle fiber locked up in pure shock at what I saw. The faint glow of the street lamps cast just enough light for me to make out what I was looking at. There in the windshield, staring directly at me, was a face. Someone, I presumed to be a woman, was lying on my hood, her face pressed right up against my windshield. Her face was completely still, locked in a permanent grin. I froze in overwhelming terror. The eyes I stared into appeared to have rolled back, showing only the whites. Her nose was turned up, pressed painfully into the glass. Her lips were stretched wide, revealing horrid, rotten teeth. Even in the darkness, I could tell her skin was sickly pale, contrasting with her long, filthy black hair. Whoever this was, she was clearly not in her right mind. I don't know how long I sat there, too afraid to move. Finally, I got a grip on myself and shot my hand to the ignition. It turned over, making in that instant the most beautiful sound I ever heard. For a split second, I was afraid I might be caught in a horror movie scenario, the one where the car won't crank as the killer approaches. I reversed as fast as I could, trying not to give this creeper time to try anything. In my panic, I remember activating the windshield wipers in a futile attempt to get her off. I thought, was I about to drive out of here with some wacko holding onto my hood? Thankfully, I didn't have to worry about that, because as soon as I stopped, the woman leapt off, landing on all fours. Seeing my opportunity, I shifted into drive and gunned it, right as I saw her reaching for the driver's side door. With my foot on the gas, I sped out of the parking lot. Behind me, I heard her let out a piercing shriek like that of an animal. I looked in my rearview mirror, and for a split second, I thought I saw her chasing me, running on all fours, her black hair swinging wildly around her. I couldn't get a good look. As I rounded a curve in the road leading out of the rest stop and merged with the highway. There I picked up speed and drove through the night. I did not dare stop again until I saw the morning light. Slender Man is real. It was a foggy Monday. Me and my girl had arrived at my house, home alone. We decided to put on Netflix and just chill. However, we were extremely tired, so decided to head to bed. I had an anxious feeling something was up and couldn't sleep, but my girl slept well. I turned off the lights and braided her hair, as I was worried it helped to fidget with her hair. I finally found myself relaxing till I turned on the light. Turns out it wasn't my girl. I was braiding Slender Man's ass hairs.